This is the idea behind Fortress Europe, whose emblem is the Atlantic Wall, a staggering system of fortifications stretching from Norway down to the Spanish border. Rommel is put in charge of defending Fortress Europe. He says, "It is absolutely necessary that we push the British and Americans back from the beaches. Afterwards, it will be too late. The first 24 hours of the invasion will be decisive. It will be the longest day." For Rommel and the Nazis, this is the beginning of... At the same time, in southern England, the Allied war machine assembled for the Normandy landings is gearing up. On the evening of the 5th of June, the paratroopers get ready to leave, decked out in their Indian-style war paint and haircut to make themselves feel brave. The Supreme Commander of the Allied forces, General Eisenhower, comes to tell them, "You are about to embark upon the Great Crusade." The plan is to land on 5 beaches along a 100-kilometer stretch of the Normandy coast, from the Seine to the Cotentin Peninsula, where the German Atlantic Wall defences are the weakest. At midnight on June the 5th, British gliders and Dakotas full of British, American and Canadian paratroopers slip silently inland over the Normandy region. The paratroopers are the first to set foot in occupied France. Their mission, to secure the flanks of the landing zone. The Allied fleet is on its way. It is the biggest armada ever assembled. Nearly 5,000 landing ships and assault craft. Yet it is not detected by the Germans, who are prevented from carrying out reconnaissance flights by the stormy weather. Bombardment and shelling from the battleships pound the coast, but completely miss their targets on the beach codenamed Omaha. The German bunkers remain intact. The first assault wave of American troops is getting ready to tackle the German defences on Omaha Beach. Among them is American writer Ernest Hemingway, who is a war correspondent. He writes, "As we moved in towards land in the grey early light, the coffin-shaped steel boats took solid green sheets of water that fell on the helmeted heads of the troops, packed shoulder to shoulder in a stiff, awkward, uncomfortable, lonely companionship of men going to a battle." Another war reporter, the photographer Robert Capa, is also caught up in this inferno. He says, "It was the ugliest beach in the whole world. Exhausted from the water and the fear, we lay flat on a small strip of wet sand. Over 2,000 American soldiers will lose their lives here. As the tide rolls in, the soldiers are trapped between the sea and gunfire from the German blockhouses." Eisenhower had prepared a communique in case the landing failed. In a handwritten letter, he said, "My decision to attack at this place was based on the best information available. If there is any blame or fault attached to the attempt, it is mine alone." But a small group succeeds in climbing up under enemy fire and neutralizing the German cannons with the help of the Royal Air Force's fighter bombers. In the meantime, the Canadian troops have landed on Juno Beach. There is indeed very little resistance, only a few shots that do not deter the British on the next beach along. The few German defenders who survive the bombardments finally surrender. British and French commandos land on the fifth beach. The Allies planned to land 326,000 men. In just 1 week, a daily average of 10,000 men, 3,200 vehicles and 15,000 tons of supplies are ferried across. In order to accomplish this, a harbour is needed. But the Allies decided to stay away from the big ports, which were too well defended, and to land on the beaches of Normandy. Instead, they brought their harbours with them, gigantic construction kits called mulberries. 146 concrete caissons, 61 metres long and weighing 6,000 tons, were assembled to create breakwaters and piers, where the Liberty ships, as they were called, could unload their cargo. In the west, the Allies are gaining the upper hand. For the Wehrmacht, the situation is deteriorating. 50,000 German soldiers are taken prisoner in the Falaise pocket, or as the Germans call it, Stalingrad in Normandy. It is a much-needed victory for the Allies. The Allies tighten their noose with a new landing in Provence. The reassembled French army plays a major part in this landing. Africans, Moroccans, Algerians, Tunisians, French colonials and young Frenchmen who were part of the Free French forces aid the liberation in Provence. It takes them just 2 weeks to liberate the entire coast, up to Marseille. The resistance movement comes out of the shadows and participates in the liberation, as it will do in Paris. Paris rises up. Barricades are erected across the city. Most of the German army has retreated to the east, but 20,000 men remain behind under the command of General von Choltitz, who has received orders from Hitler to destroy the city. Violent fighting breaks out. On the 4th day of the insurrection, a French unit, General Leclerc's 2nd Armoured Division, arrives from Normandy, and the capital is finally liberated the next morning. The Germans surrender, and General von Choltitz is taken to Leclerc's headquarters in the Montparnasse train station. Hitler had just called and asked his famous question: "Brennt Paris? Is Paris burning?" Choltitz preferred to turn himself in. This highly disciplined officer from the Airborne Regiment disobeyed Hitler's order to fight to the last man. Then de Gaulle arrives, with eloquent words for history.
Paris outragé, Paris brisé, Paris martyrisé, mais Paris libéré.
While France and Belgium are progressively liberated and the Red Army waits outside Warsaw, Hitler was hoping to recapture the port of Antwerp in order to stop the Allies from unloading their equipment, which would enable them to move into Germany. But the German offensive in the Ardennes failed, due to the extraordinary defense put up by the American paratroopers in Bastogne, to the intervention of General Patton's tanks, and to the overwhelming power of the Allied air forces. As for the Russians in the east, they are crossing the German border. Millions of Germans flee in panic from the approaching Soviet troops, especially the German women, who fear the mass rapes that are being perpetrated. The Americans meet up with the Russians on the Elbe, near the Torgau Bridge. East meets west, the final act of the alliance. The atmosphere is friendly for the cameras. Stalin's portrait is superbly displayed, but Roosevelt's is draped in black mourning crepe. He died on April the 12th. One of America's most renowned generals, George S. Patton, is furious. He thinks the Americans should have entered Berlin before the Russians. Patton, the man with the pistols in his belt, who drove his tanks through Africa, through Normandy, through the Ardennes. He says to Eisenhower, "The 9th Army is 60 miles from Berlin. Not to go all the way there is a historic error whose consequences will be very grave."